President Trump took a surprise drive last night to wave at his supporters gathered outside the hospital where he's being treated for COVID-19 after his doctor said he could be discharged as soon as today.
I also think we're going to pay a little surprise to some of the great patriots that we have out on the street, and they've been out there for a long time, and they've got Trump flags, and they love our country.
Although he was visibly seen wearing a mask, his motorcade was packed with other people, sparking criticism that all those in the vehicle will have to now self-isolate for 14 days for Trump's moment of theatre, as it was said. Donald Trump's chief of staff said a decision on whether to discharge him will be made later today between the US president himself and the medical team. Let's speak to our friend Michael Graham, managing editor of Inside Sources, a DC-based news organisation. It seemed like a lot of hassle, Michael, getting the cavalcade together and making sure everything was in order for a quick trip down the road to wave at some people.
Oh, you don't know what he wanted to do. He wanted to be in the motorcycle sidecar out handing out candy and doing fist bumps with people. They were lucky to get him in the car. That was progress for Team Trump.
That was a compromise, right?
Exactly. So I don't know what you're complaining about. What the heck?
Indeed. I mean, it's interesting because I didn't really think about the kind of issue of not that I'm insensitive to his security detail, but sure, that didn't really occur to me about the guys driving the car. Right. I just
have you seen the video? Because they're actually in like PPE gowns.
Yes, that's right.
They have the masks on.
Yeah,
they
they've
have
got
a
the
bubble.
whole thing going on.
But that's, according to his aide, Corey Lewandowski, they even had a plexiglass sheet, between the front and back. But
I did wonder.
Talk about, yet again, Trump sending the non-traditional message when it comes to a contagious and occasionally fatal disease. But look, I'll tell you, I've talked to Trumpies the last 48 hours, and they think this is great. They think that this is, our guy can kick Corona's butt. Look at Boris over there. Put him in the hospital. They barely made it. Our guy, he's 74 years old, and he can arm wrestle an alligator with one hand, beat Corona with the other. So,
I mean, precisely that must be the thinking, though, isn't it? I mean, he's essentially, he's not hoovering up a bunch of Biden votes out of this, but he's firming up the Trump voters.
Yeah, this is his theory is always project strength, the strong horse. That's, if there is a political philosophy inside that well-coiffed head, that's it in a nutshell. And being sick is not his way. They've edited his videos that he sent out because apparently he coughed in the middle of one of them. Can't have any coughing.
Yeah.
So
I saw that.
There are two ways to look at this. One is this is an opportunity for Trump to reset and might cause some undecided voters to take a new look at him. He definitely is more mellow in the hospital than some people say. That demeanor is a good thing. The other way to look at it is he's down between 7 and 10 points to Biden. Biden has more money than he does, and Trump's number one preferred way of campaigning, which is going out and doing rallies, is off the table. Yeah. And therefore it's extremely unlikely that Donald Trump is reelected. He'll be the first president since Jimmy Carter not to get 2 terms.
Wow, that's going to be interesting. Despite what appears to have been I don't know what he's been doing on Twitter. Have you caught up with this in the last bunch of hours? I'm looking at them here. He's just done what looks like about 20 tweets. Stock market highs, vote. Then another one, strongest ever military, vote. Law and order, vote. Religious liberty, vote.
But
biggest
he doesn't
tax
even
cuts,
know
vote.
what he's. If you keep watching, eventually you'll see stuff like 4440 or fight. Slap the Japs with your metal scraps. I mean, he's just going to start having phrases from history just pouring out of him. He doesn't know.
Yeah, I mean, this is clearly, he's a man electioneering. I mean, what does he need to get? He doesn't need his own votes. He's already got them. He's not going to get Biden votes. So how big is this chasm in the middle, Michael, of waverers?
So the working theory on how Trump wins involves 2 things. One is shy Trump voters, shy Tory voters, as you know them. Inside Sources did a poll in these very affluent suburbs of Philadelphia and found that while Trump is losing there 35 to 60, half the people said they know somebody who they think is secretly a Trump voter and not telling anybody. So let's say that they're right, and that gets him a couple of points there. Then the way he makes up the rest of the gap is that they turn out voters who are, when I'm back in my political consulting days, we would call low-mo voters, low motivation. They don't vote very often. Some people vote every election. Some people vote every presidential election, and then some people just erratically vote. And if he can get a bunch of those people who don't care about Republicans, don't even care about politics in the traditional way, they just care about Trump, and they want to show they're on Team Trump. If, as they claim, they've identified a couple of million of these people, and they can actually get them to do something they don't do very often, which is show up and vote, then they can turn the election. And if it sounds, far-fetched, that's exactly what Barack Obama did in 2012. In 2012, Barack Obama lost the election among traditional voters. Romney beat him. But what he did is he pulled in several million non-traditional voters, young single women, people of color, and he created basically a new electorate. And so that's the only path that I've had anyone describe to me that I find is credible for Trump. And I still say that it's a 8 in 10, 9 in 10 chance that Biden is elected.
Yeah, I mean, they often say that it's the oppositions, in this case, I mean, slightly different terminology between your country and ours, but Biden, the government or the governing individual loses the election, the other guy doesn't win it, right?
Yeah, that generally is it. And, let's face it, in 2016, Trump didn't win. Hillary Clinton lost. She was uniquely unpopular. And so that was, he was lucky enough to run against her then. Joe Biden has run a brilliant campaign, which is basically to stay in hiding at all times.
It's good, isn't it? It's a new one on me. I mean, I study this stuff and work in this world as you do. And I've never seen this one before.
I think it's working for him very, very well. Let's face it, the more you know somebody, the less you want them to be your president. And that's just human nature. So let him hide out. You don't know what he's really thinking. Whatever. By the way, I want to comment on the fact you still have the I Have a Dream speech book, which I think is interesting.
I stole from
I grew up in a different place. I grew up in rural South Carolina, where, I'm not exaggerating, the head of the Ku Klux Klan for the state of South Carolina lived about a quarter of a mile, half mile away from me.
Yeah.
His sons rode the bus with me, beat my sister and I up one time. There's very ugly people. I got called N-lover because I wasn't on board with the thing. And and the presence of the injustice is what makes, for people who grew up in the South, more powerful. Is that the words of his dream aren't abstract, they're concrete. I will say this, the vast majority of white people I hung out with, they didn't talk race, and they never would use the N-word. But there was this, group, this 25% or so, that was the hate was so ugly and so apparent. And you'd watch how they treated people, black people, and you just go, why are you doing this? And so it really resonates when you've seen the injustice up close, which is why I get really frustrated with the Black Lives Matter movement today, who are trying to pretend that it's as bad today as it was when my dad was in rural South Carolina in the 1950s and 60s.
Which is clearly a nonsense.
It's just not.
It's just
not as bad.
Demonstrably not true, isn't it?
Exactly.
But it doesn't. But again, we come back to, we've been talking about critical race theory in the show, Michael, today. This kind of idea that grew up really in sort of left-wing universities in the States, and then businesses took hold of it, corporations take hold of it, they rewrite it, they inflame it, they make it bigger. And then, of course, companies are absolutely scared witless to not adopt it, because it sounds like, well, what's not to like? Do you want to be a nicer, more racially aware person? Yeah, of course I do. Where do I sign? When in fact, often the danger is that you are inflaming a narrative. It's retrograde, it takes it backwards, and that's why you end up, we saw it in the UK, 16-year-old kids on the streets of London, looking nice and opulent and smart, talking as if it's Mississippi 1957.
So there's a lesson to be learned from American politics. George W. Bush, whatever you think about him, not a racist, treated everyone graciously, was literally called Hitler repeatedly for his presidency, in the mainstream media. You are Hitler, blah, 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 blah. Mitt Romney runs. He's smeared as racially suspect and blah, blah, blah. Nicest, sweetest guy. I actually know Governor Romney a little bit.
Yeah.
And then Trump shows up. And you've already fired all these guys. So you treat Trump the same way that you treat Romney and Bush. What that tells white people of goodwill is, I have no animosity, but if you're going to treat me the same way, whether I'm trying to be gracious and trying to be open to my own failings and trying to be racially aware, or you're going to treat me like Trump, no matter what I do, well, then why accommodate? Why, work with you? Why cooperate? And it is a long-term losing proposition, because the fact is 70+% of America is still white. It's going to be a majority white country for another generation. Peace, education, respect, that's the way. Not making white people sit in a room where someone tells them you're inherently evil because you're white, which is one of the premises of critical race theory.
Correct.
That's just, that doesn't, how does that help? I don't get it. Treating everyone as though we're all would-be Klan members is a mistake if you're trying to accomplish something good.
I was thinking I should send you my Martin Luther King book, but bearing in mind that I stole it, it could be impounded by the customs either in this country or in yours, and then we'd both end up in the county jail, as you say over there, for dealing in dealing in stolen goods. So I'll just send you some images online. Let's leave it at that. Michael, always good to have you on, sir. Thank you.